is your captain speaking.
Welcome back to This Is Your Captain Speaking, where we're giving you access to New Zealand's top technology leaders and their stories. This week, we've got the ex-CIO of AA Insurance and Mitre 10, Phil Costa, talking to us about his leadership journey, his new venture in AI, and gas stations and cyber outages, and his journey as a leader. Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Julian. I'm one of the directors at Potentia, with the largest technology recruitment company in New Zealand. I head up the leadership search.
Cool. I'm Phil. I'm co-founder of a company called AgenticAI.
Nice.
So yeah.
Nice one. So you're a leader. What's on your mind at the moment with leadership?
Well, because I've co-founded an AI company, a lot of it's been about how AI and people are going to work together in the future. There's a lot of new technology coming down the track, and people are afraid about what it's going to do, what it's going to do to jobs. But I think as a leader, what I think about is how the technology can actually help people do better. Can help augment them, and I think it's a good thing if it's done properly.
Yeah. Well, it took us 30 seconds to start talking about AI. There's a lot to talk about in AI at the moment, isn't there?
There is.
And it seems that everywhere you turn at the moment, that's the topic du jour for a lot of different people, right?
Yeah.
And so what's something that no one knows about you as a leader?
Oh, as a leader, gosh, that's a very good question. Well, basically, I think as a leader, my first job working in a service station, I didn't want to go into working in that service station just to pump gas. I actually wanted to run the service station.
Right.
And I love working with people, and I always look to, build teams. And, that was at the age of 17 when I did that. So it's something that I've always wanted to be and always aspired to be, a good leader all my life.
So, I mean, the archetype of a leader is that there is an element of ambition, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got to be able to put yourself in a painful position, either through growth, through difficult conversations, through all those sort of things. And I guess that it's interesting, right? Because the origin story of every leader is something's come along and they've had to step up or step in to that kind of thing. So it sounds like you wanted to be involved in leadership from a really early age, just around maybe the mobilisation of people, making things better. What was the kind of the driver for you?
I just love to see people motivated and work together to achieve something bigger than just themselves. I'm not a look at me person. I prefer to work through people and have the opportunity to let them be the best they can be. And I get so much out of that. I get so much out of seeing that success, and I've stayed in contact with a lot of people that I've worked with, that I've led over the years, and just watch them grow. And it's a great feeling.
Yeah. And do you think that when you went into leadership, did you have to earn your place? Was it painful when you first began because you were at the gas station?
Well,
and then did you progress then into a leadership role beyond that?
I probably won't go into some examples at the gas station. There were certainly some interesting situations there.
Knives,
but yeah,
knives.
Yeah. Well, motorcycle gangs and all sorts coming in. But I had to go and.
Well, maybe we should talk about that.
I had to be on the till. I was the only one that with everybody else hid out the back. No. Aside from that, I think probably my first, probably the biggest experience with leadership was I ended up getting a role, my first leadership role, and I ended up jumping up a couple of levels. And the person who was my manager at the time ended up reporting into me.
Right. Okay.
And that person was very, very competent, respected her greatly. It was, I had her and I had 5 others, and all of them were older than me, and it was my first, oh my goodness, moment. And it was
imposter syndrome, or did you get that feeling?
Oh,
or did you just go for it?
Well, it was. I just went for it, and I think I think what kept me going was the fact that I all I tried to do was to remove barriers for these people and help them do what they needed to do. I wasn't there to necessarily tell them what to do. And I think that's stuck with me all my career, because I think leadership is not only about execution, it's actually about relationships. And it's about balancing those relationships and keeping them balanced. Most people know what they need to do. As long as you've got a set of goals, and there's a clear set of goals, they just want clarity.
My stepdad was an organisational development consultant, worked with mainly public sector customers or SOEs, and he said to me, "There's very few lazy people in these organisations. Most people want to do a good job, and so as a leader, it's about you trying to understand what their motivations are, and then get crap out of the way so that they can actually do their jobs properly." And he said also, you really need to listen to the people in your team, because often they're at the coalface. They're the people who know the truth of things, and you need to incorporate that into any directives that are coming down from the top, but you also need to be able to understand it. Have you found that that's the case?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's wonderful when you have the time to, I guess, go through the process of getting everybody lined up, giving them a chance, having their voice. What can often be challenging in leadership is often the business needs to move incredibly fast. Something might have happened. There might have been so it's often a challenge of kind of balancing, the psychological safety and keeping everybody happy, or keeping everybody motivated and actually getting that done. And I think that's one of the hardest things in terms of balancing that. How hard do you push? And how do you keep them engaged? And I think that's a tough job.
Where did you learn how to do that? Like, did you have a great mentor or a great coach? Did you go out and find those things, or get that information from your peers?
I just think it was. I've had a few people that I've really looked up to. In fact, I don't think there's anyone that I've reported into that I haven't taken something that I saw in them that I thought was something that I should take on myself. I've certainly had people I've reported to that I didn't like, or I didn't want to emulate their leadership style. But that doesn't matter. There's always something in everyone. But I've probably had 2 or 3 people in my career that I just said, "Geez, I really like the way you do it. You do things. I like the way you handle people. I like the way you articulate yourself, and I like the way you handle me as well."
Such a powerful thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember another mentor of mine said, one of the key elements that you can do is tell someone how you want to be managed. And if they pay attention, they're a good leader.
Yeah.
If they don't, then they're probably not going to be a person that you're going to learn a lot from.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. Are there particular individuals that you would kind of nominate, or
there's probably a few
early on in your career, or
probably scattered all the way through. There was Lady Glenda at Coca-Cola. She was I reported into her in the early days before I got promoted, and she just I was full of ideas. I was in my 20s, and just incredibly energetic, and just
no way.
And she was very good at actually keeping me focused without actually taking away the enthusiasm that I had. And she just had this way about her, and I always took parts of that away with me. Probably later on in my career, someone that had a big influence on me was Neil Cowie. Actually, he was my manager at Mitre 10, and he just had such a good way with people. And I remember us having a bit of a crisis. Something went wrong in the back end of our infrastructure, and it was a big deal. And I remember I had to go in and talk to the board about what was happening and what we were doing. And man, I was nervous. I honestly, it was because I was worrying about my team trying to fix the problem. I was worrying about what the implications. You sort of sit there and go, and he just put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "It's going to be okay. Just breathe." Just breathe as we walked in, and that I've actually done that to my own stuff,
Yeah,
my own
interesting.
stuff before, just really, he could actually just see how you're feeling.
Yeah.
And he asked, just, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be
and
okay.
that's trust, right? And trust and faith in you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when someone believes in you, it gives you that extra juice. Right?
Absolutely. And he's honest. He was honest and trustworthy, and just very clear about what he needed. He'd tell me when I'd done something right, but he'd do it in a way, that was, I knew it was just going to help me grow. So he was awesome. In fact, I still talk to him to this day. Here's probably a big one. Yeah.
So Mitre 10, Coca-Cola. Well, what are the roles that you've actually held that you kind of like? I worked really hard to get to those things. What's been the progression?
Probably. Well, I started off my first year out of uni. I was kind of one of those people that didn't really want to leave uni. I just kept doing degrees.
Was good fun.
Degrees and conduits and all sorts of bits and pieces.
Opportunities
and then
to hang out at Shadows.
Yeah, and then my parents kicked me out of home, so I needed to get a job. So I got my first year. I went into like a little management consulting firm. And learned what the difference between a salary and an on-target earning was, and basically earned nothing for the year because I'd never done it before. And then I was there for basically exactly 12 months, and then I got my job at Coca-Cola. And I started off as a database administrator on an AS400. I was sitting there, doing these big reams of paper and printing things out, and looking at all the data and giving them to the managers. This was some time ago. And from that point, I thought, well, no, I want to be a BA. I want to be a BA, and then I wanted to be a project manager. So I was a project manager, and then I wanted to be a BA PM, and then suddenly I wanted to be a manager. And that was probably only within my first 3 years there that I just kept wanting to go up. And I did pretty well there. I got put into their fast track managers program, and Coca-Cola are really good at sponsoring, leaders, and they sponsored me on my MBA.
Right.
And I started to do my MBA, and then at that point I managed to get that role, and kind of it all really took off from there. I've never worked so hard in my life though. Trying to do an MBA, vertical learning curve with being a new leader. It was tough. It was really hard yakka just getting there. But I just had the drive. I just wanted to keep pushing and keep climbing.
And was it about kind of you asking yourself, what is my potential here? What is the ceiling? Or was it more like you just wanted to get to that next bit, and then the next bit, and then you got there and you're like, right, now the next bit?
I think it was one of the challenges I have is I often don't stand around long enough to smell the roses, and that's something. Forgive anyone some advice. Don't do that. Always spend some time. When you reach a goal or spend some time just thinking about it and appreciating it. But for me, it was. I loved dealing with bigger and bigger problems. The higher up you go, the bigger problems you deal with, and the more less solvable problems. And I just felt, the more I kind of kept going, the more I just loved what I was doing. And that ambition just completely took over. It was just enjoyable work. It was enjoyable work. I got to do lots of different things at Coke, and it was, thoroughly enjoyed it.
And what are the most difficult kind of senior roles that you've had?
Well, probably, I would say it was probably dotted all the way through my career. There were moments in every single role that I had. I think I worked for ACP Media, which became Channel 9, and so forth, for about 4.5 years. And the first couple of years that I was there, media is a cool place to work. It's really, really interesting.
It was then.
It was then, yeah. It was just amazing. And I used to go to Australia every couple of weeks, and just really cool for a guy that's in his early 30s. It was, then the GFC hit.
Yeah.
And
what was that like as a leader? Like,
it was in a media company. Media company is almost like a canary in the mine. When all the advertising starts to dry up, usually 6 months later, you start seeing in the media that the whole economy's going down a hole. And it was, and when things dry up, you cut. And that was my first experience at layoffs and all of those sorts of things. And I had to make basically had to take 2/3 of my team out and restructure the entire thing.
So you had, I think any downturn, the way that you lead when you've got headwinds, the way that you lead when the organisation, your team is in pain, really does define you as a leader. Like, how do you approach that situation where you've got to go in and cut?
With courage. I remember sitting in a room and being asked to move on about 90% of my team. And I knew that was going to be to the detriment of the New Zealand business. And I felt like if I didn't do it, it was me that was going to go. But I ended up walking out of there, and I had about a week to come back and say who and what and how, and I didn't sleep for 5 days. And when I came back into the room, I said, I haven't done what you've asked. I unfortunately still had to move on about 70% of the team, but there's no way I'm going to. And why? I was asked, and I said, well, look, these people, these things are going to fail. This is not going to work. I was very, very matter of fact. So I sort of remember I was shaking quite a bit, saying it. It was my first GM role, actually, and going, geez, I'm stuffed. And the manager that I was talking to looked at me and he said, fine, okay, get out.
Wow.
And that was it. And I managed to save about...
What did that teach you? Like, that you got to back yourself?
You got to back yourself, yeah. You got to back yourself. And I think you have to do what you think is right. What you think is right is not always right, but all you've got is your own barometer. You've got your own values, and you've just got to hold to them. That's all you have in terms of your brand, and I think that's super important.
Yeah, and look, and I talk to a lot of the leaders and the execs that I talk to, and I think a lot of people, it takes a long time in the leadership before you realise that if you're not expressing yourself professionally, then you are always going to feel either a sense of being an imposter or not good enough for the job, or you're going to feel a lot more anxiety and stress because you're doing things that you don't think you should do, and that can lead to some pretty awful outcomes. Yeah,
and I think if you are doing things that you that completely grate against who you are and your values, you're
in the wrong place.
You're not going to last long. I mean, your mental health is going to suffer. You're going to suffer. And look, we all have to earn money and all have to put food on the table. But I think your brand and what's in here is super important. Yeah.
And then you after ACP, you moved on into more senior roles, or?
No, I actually so I was GM of IT and digital at ACP. And then I moved, you'd argue that it was actually a step down, and there was a reason for it. I took a role at Vector as the head of, they call it the head of projects and architecture or something, it's a role like that. So I kind of halved my portfolio and really started to focus. And the reason I took that role was because I hadn't had first-hand experience at very large-scale, high-risk projects.
Right.
And Vector was an organisation, I think they were doing upgrades on their SCADA network, doing all sorts of, they had large projects, and that was a chance for me to cut my teeth. And they were, also, they were quite well structured. Andres van der Woeshausen was there as a CIO at the time, and they followed all of the risk protocols and all, and so it was. So after coming out of media and coming into utilities, it was just like night and day. And I sort of cut my teeth on that for a few years and got some really good experience that then helped me lift up into a higher CIO role after that. And I think if I hadn't have got that experience, I sort of would have stayed at a small IT team level. But to do that, I had to, I just had to almost go sideways, slight, whatever. But it was, it was worthwhile.
It seems that there is a desire here for you to constantly be in discomfort, where it's painful and there's some growth. Has that always served you, or has there been times where you've gone, I probably should have taken that a little easier, or I probably shouldn't have pushed myself too hard? Has it ended in any train wrecks?
Look, I think it can be hard on mental health sometimes, hard on family, when you're pushing extremely hard. I do try and make sure everything's balanced, and I do have, as I've got older, a much better perspective on how much I can take on.
Yep.
And even more important, I've got a good idea about what I need to drop or stop doing to keep myself in balance.
Is there how would you communicate that? Is there kind of a framework that you'd be like, right, here's what works for me, here's something that I'd talk to other leaders about?
Well, I think it's an equal mix of your job and getting your job done, of learning and of spending time with family. And I think as you get, as I've got older, spending time with family has become more important. But learning has always just been as important. There were a few years in my career where I didn't feel like I was learning at a rate that was helping keep me motivated.
From a progression perspective?
Well, it was.
Or from a.
Well, there were lots of.
Did you have like a FOMO thing, or?
No, lots of problems being dealt with. But I guess the structured learning, the going into the classroom, keeping going on those sorts of things completely fell by the wayside. And I was just always never had time to go and do a course or do anything like that. And I soon realised that was a really important part of who I am. To do that, just to have that mix. And so at the moment I'm doing a PhD. So that's, and of course I've got my
Doesn't sound like you stand still very often. No.
well, yeah, but it's I people go, oh my goodness, what's wrong with you? And I'm going, well, like PhD is like my hobby. I love doing it. I love it. Just looking at all the research and learning and all of that. That's really cool. Really fun.
I do have a theory. You talk about leaders are readers and all that sort of thing. Now in this day and age, it's not just about books or consuming the written word. It's leaders require, especially in an age of massive adaptation and transformation, they require to be learners, continuous learners.
Yeah.
So it sounds like everyone learns differently. It sounds like you could be quite bookish, and you enjoy the whole medium of the classroom. Is that predominantly how you consume your learning?
No, I do learn on the job as well. So there's worked with a lot of amazing people over my career, both that have reported into me or I've reported into them, or that have been colleagues. And I'm a bit like a sponge. I'll sort of sit in there and look at what they do and go, wow, I'll just write that down. I'm going to do that. I mean, the executive team at Mitre 10 when I worked there, geez, they were clever bunch of people.
What was your role there?
CIO.
Right.
Yeah. And, we'd sit there and we'd be dealing with all sorts of things, and they were all just so good at what they did. And, just learning off them was really, really important to me.
Is that something, if you're giving advice to other people who are coming up through the ranks, what would you say to them about the education and the learning for their teams? Because yes, they've got to do it. Yes, you've got to figure out how you learn, and you've got to have your own framework of things. So, for instance, me, I love listening to books and podcasts, and then putting it into practice, making experiments. But then predominantly, I need to talk about my ideas, or I need to be doing that with a group.
Yeah.
So, what's the advice that you would give to those who are coming on up about their own learning and then the learning in their teams?
I think always put some time aside for it, and you're never too old to learn, even if you're at the highest highest point in a business. You've got to keep learning. The other thing too is what you learn, and the breadth of it is also extremely important as well. I took some time off early last year, and I was doing courses in industrial design, and I started coding again. I haven't cut a line of code for 25 years, and all of that stuff. Why are you doing it? But I found that the more you stretch yourself, the more you learn, the more you seem to start to synthesize things, and you actually get a really wide set of skills from that you can actually connect together and use in your roles. So I just be curious, go out there and do stuff.
Plenty of analogous examples around that, right? Like, I don't know if you've read Steve Jobs' biography written by Walter Isaacson, but he talks about how there's not me blowing smoke here for the Steve Jobs comparison, but when he went to university, and he kind of didn't go to university, just went to the classes and paid for it. But he went to calligraphy classes.
Yeah.
And the reason that we've got all the fonts and everything within our current iterations of word processing is because he learned about the things that he was really curious about, and he learned about the things that were interesting to him. And the end result of that was the application of that stuff into contemporary software. So I think it's a really good lesson, right? Because there's lots of things that you can learn from. I don't know if you've got a passion about parenting, and all of the things that you learn around how to grow, learning how to be a greater parent. There's a whole bunch of things that transfers across into leading teams. Cutting code, understanding those systems. There's a whole bunch of things that may work for pattern recognition and how to solve organizational problems in your team, or all of those things, right? Like, it's interesting the way that, and just by doing the learning, you're stretching the neurons. You're making new space for things, and it keeps you, I don't know, hungry. It's for me, it actually just stimulates creativity. That industrial design course I did early last year, I ended up buying a 3D printer, and I bought a laser printer, and I taught myself electronics. Laser cutter,
and just I taught myself to fabricate, and then I was writing the code that made the and it was just, and some of those skills, I've actually got another little business that I've been running in the pet care industry, and one of the products I made is one of the products that we're going to be looking to sell. And there's a prototype sitting on my dining room table of that, and I've ended up, after about a year and a half, I'm going to be incorporating some health metrics into the product. Right. It looks at pet health and so forth, and it took me a year and a half to even think about the technology part of it. I started off with it, but then suddenly it all comes together. Yeah. And it's just, I never could have done that unless I had gone and learned something new.
There's some kind of philosophical lesson in there. Hey? Yeah. About just stumble into things that you're curious about, because you never know when you're going to apply them.
Well, you look in a business, you look at, just because you're sitting in the IT department, in the engineering team, it doesn't mean you shouldn't sit there and try and understand what happens in marketing or what happens. And I think having that hunger and having that curiosity is, you really need that now, especially in the world of AI and what's coming. It's just that human curiosity is going to be so important.
What's the key pieces of feedback that have changed you or changed your leadership philosophy or journey along the way?
I probably had one, this was years ago, where I was getting really anxious. There was a major outage, huge amounts going on, and I started to get quite flustered, and I remember the manager saying to me, "It's not about you, Phil. It's about the team, and about the team you're leading and getting the problem solved." And that really stuck with me, because I what I learnt from that was that when you're a leader, everyone watches you. Especially your team, and how you present yourself, even your body language. They will see it, and they interpret it, and they talk about it, and you need to be strong. You still need to be human, but you need to just realise that having your head down, muttering to yourself, can actually be interpreted as something like, "Oh my goodness, we're stuffed. Nothing's gonna." You gotta hold yourself high when these things happen. That was good advice.
There was a great piece of feedback that I got from a mentor as well, and he said, "Don't walk in the door of work until you're ready to lead."
Yes.
And he said, consistency, even if you're a bit of a bastard, like consistency is the key, right? Because people are looking for a consistent experience.
Yeah.
Right. They're looking for that level of kind of, okay, I know what I'm getting.
Yeah.
I know what I'm getting. And everyone gets under stress.
Yeah.
All those things, you can be inconsistent, but as much as you can be, try and provide that consistent experience for people. Consistent advice. Do you find that, that piece of it's not about you, is that a piece of advice that you've given to people that are on their journey in your team to becoming leaders? Or
Yeah, I always, I probably didn't put it as eloquently as that with my team, but I always pointed them back to, the fact that they were leaders and they need to look after their team and they need to, protect them or at least give them a room to be able to move and do what they need to do. I think another important thing, another important part of that is you need to give people permission to tell you when you're not holding yourself up to those values, to those
standards.
And I remember I had an occasion where I was lucky enough that my team felt comfortable, and we had a situation. It was a couple of weeks. It was during COVID, I think it was, but my head was down and I was sitting there. Because when I'm under stress and I sort of sit there and I'm thinking, I'm trying to solve problems, and I sort of end up becoming a bit like a mad professor.
Yeah.
Wandering around, muttering to myself and.
Like a homeless person.
Like a homeless person. But I've got
being homeless is funny, but yeah, I know.
I've got way better at sort of stopping myself from doing that. But that occasion, I let myself go, and I had about 4 or 5 people. Feedback came through. I said, "Phil, you told us to give you some feedback. We just noticed
Not now. Not now.
Noticed you're doing this, and you're coming in, and it's it's scaring the horses." So I was sitting there. I remember reading the email because they all came in one morning.
Yeah.
I remember I went bright red, and I thought, "Oh, Phil, come on."
Yeah.
Please. So I walked out and smiled and walked around. And you got to do that. Even if the world's burning, you got to walk around. You walk around the desks. You talk. Yeah. How are you? It's a selflessness,
right?
It is.
And Simon Sinek always, I don't know if you read the book, Leaders Eat Last, and it's a military thing. And the idea is that you take care of your team. You take care of the people that you're responsible for.
Yeah.
And you, as an officer, because it was a military analogy, and that officer eats last. And so the idea being that you look after people. And, the irony is that I think in this day and age, people are constantly talking about, are you filling up your own cup? Are you filling up your own cup? And that's a great question, because if you do put yourself under too much pressure, or you're down to the bottom dregs, you don't have anything to fill anyone else's cup up with.
Yeah.
But that selflessness does seem to be a feature of great leadership, right?
Yeah.
Like it's prioritizing the good of others above your own. But you need some kind of consistency to ensure that you've got enough well-being to be able to be able to do the long journey as well, right? To be able to provide that on an ongoing basis.
I think that leadership style has longevity. I mean, there are other leadership styles. There are more sort of authoritarian. You do this. There's the
command,
there's the fear. The Machiavellian styles, and look, they get things done as well. But if you want a team to follow you through anything, you treat them like the brothers and sisters. You treat them like you've still got to be firm, and you still got to hold accountable. This is not mollycoddling. Sometimes I think people get that confused.
Not having difficult conversations.
But if you've got good people, you'll tell them they've done something wrong, and they'll go, "Oh my goodness," they'll I think it's extremely important. And I've seen that. I've had situations where I've had team members. We had a cyber outage one day, and it was a massive event.
Job doesn't sound very fun. All these.
Oh no, it's good when you fix it. But and there were members of the team there that were. HR was trying to march them out because they hadn't slept. They were
right.
and they were coming around the building and coming in the back door and coming up the back lift. And I went, hey, what did he said? I'm not leaving the team. We had a couple of guys do that, and I go, oh, look, I get it. It's amazing you want to do that, but no, you get it. You're going home, and I'm sticking you in an Uber. You're not driving, and away you go. But that sort of loyalty is incredible.
Yeah, and I mean that's magic, right? Especially when it comes to the crunch, and you get that kind of cohesion, and you get that kind of loyalty. It's pretty amazing. And
yeah,
I mean those are the days you walk even if you're pretty pooped, you walk home pretty proud.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's the thing about being a leader, the burden of being a leader is you also take the accountability.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're a member of your team stuffs up, you take it on your shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. There's too many people that expose their teams. So. Yeah. And what do you, like, when you're thinking about those things, what are the key aspects for you when you're selecting great people to come in to the team with you?
You know what? It depends on...
Can you crystallise it down into a few things, or is it...
It's tough. No, it's a tough one actually, because it depends what type of environment that you're in. So if you're in an environment where it's a slow build and you've got time to get all the pieces there, your processes and your people and your culture, and you've got that time to build that up, then you look for certain types of leaders. If you're coming into an environment and it's burning, and there are some really major problems, sometimes you actually have to go into fix-it mode, and then you flip over to the build from there, because there's no point
with survival
taking your time if the fire is burning on the ship and the ship's going to sink, because nobody's going to hit. So it really depends. So some leaders are good at getting things done and getting their teams rallied around that. Some are good at getting the team motivated and self-sustainable, yeah, and working that through. On the very rare occasion you come across someone that can do both and flips between the two.
It's interesting, right? Because I talk about peacetime and wartime leadership, and I think that the ability to transition between the two is very difficult, right? Because they have different horizons.
Yes, and
you look at someone who's fit for purpose during a phase of everything's falling apart, and you almost need a autocratic, dictatorial kind of style, because if we don't do it, it all falls over.
Like COVID, for example.
Correct.
I mean, people's livelihoods. I was working in retail at the time, and there were things that we just quite simply had to get done, because there were families out there that owned those stores that were basically losing money hand over fist, and we needed to get solutions in place quickly. So I mean, even you can still explain to everyone why you're pushing hard.
But it's context.
But it's context. It is context. And honesty and clarity.
And being able to see the context and actually able to see the fact that, okay, it's no longer fit for purpose. The style needs to change. The metrics need to change, because we're heading into calmer waters.
Yeah.
And I think that I have an observation that within the current technology sector, there was a lot of leaders that grew up from between 2008 and 2022 across that 14 years, where there was a lot of tailwinds in technology and a lot of spend, and leadership styles evolved where there was an imbalance between what teams were giving you and the leadership style and the efforts that were going in to build highly cohesive teams. And then when the tide went out, funding went away, resources went away, these people had to develop leadership skills that were very, very different in times of scarcity as in times of plenty. And, I know a lot of people that have been in that situation, and adapting something when you've been, your whole career of leadership has been related to different things. It's incredibly difficult. Have you seen much of that within the organisations that you're in?
I actually think that it's interesting, the peacetime wartime thing. I think it's those moments there that if you can adapt and you can, work on your own skills, you just become such a much better leader. And I mean, going into COVID, like the COVID. Was probably the equivalent of kind of the GFC. I had to completely change my style. But I think the thing is, no matter what happens, you still treat people with respect. Even if you're telling someone they've lost their job, you still treat them with respect, and you treat them like they're humans. And the thing with COVID is I had to let a whole load of people go during COVID, and 95% of them came back when things, and that was just because of how they were treated on the way.
Processes that you went through,
and I think that's actually super important.
Just proud. It's actually funny, because I imagine that there's no, you don't have a sense of pride with the layback, with the layoffs, but there's a sense that, like, if you've done a great job, then you can still bump into that person and have a sense of familiarity and respect, irrespective of whether they come back and join you or not.
Yeah. And I think it's actually having empathy too. I mean, I still find that sort of thing really hard. Really hard. Yeah,
it's painful.
It is painful, and it's sort of, you can't help but empathise. I remember I had one young lady, and I was letting her know that she this was during the GFC, and that she was moving on. And I remember we're sitting in the office, and suddenly the lights go out. She was a Scottish girl. Great sense of humour. I still talk to her to this day, and she goes, "Well, that's awkward. You're lucky I haven't got a knife." Luckily, I knew she was joking. But
yeah. So, like, when you think about the tech sector, you've been in it for a long time, by the sounds of things. And so, what do you think it needs now, the local sector, from your perspective? Because you've sat you've been on the client side, or you've been in the end users or the enterprises. What do you think it needs?
I am going to go back to the AI side of things as well, because I think it's going to be.
What's the largest revolution in our lifetimes, right?
I don't think New Zealand is getting ready for it fast enough. I think it's our guidelines are just not moving. They don't have the funding to get in behind those guidelines. I think it could be a massive opportunity for New Zealand and New Zealand tech sector in terms of selling overseas.
Yeah.
Go back to that knowledge economy. Remember when they used to talk about that years ago?
Yep.
I think it could be an amazing thing. I think we've lost a lot of talent overseas.
Yeah, we have.
In the last few years.
I mean, from a recruitment perspective.
Yeah, you couldn't find a job to save yourself a year ago. And I had about 4 people that I mentored, and 3 of them went overseas. Yeah. And they were really clever
The danger
people.
as well is that much of that population or the technology workforce were of an age where they are individual contributors, they are senior level skills, and the majority of them have gone to Australia or overseas, to the UK, etc. And so you've got this dip in capability where there's not enough young leaders or young experts kind of coming through, and we're going to have this dearth, which we historically we've filled those gaps with great technology migration. Immigration policies, where we're bringing talent in from offshore, but there's a whole bunch of Kiwis who are part of that, the fabric of that technology workforce in senior roles that just aren't there anymore.
Yeah, and also the feast to famine thing. You look at these digital transformations that are going on across New Zealand. A large number of New Zealand businesses still haven't yet gone through a digital transformation, and look, 70% of digital transformations actually don't get to where they want to get to. It's like
we won't say fail.
We won't. That's why I
didn't have potential.
I'd say there's some definitions of fail. I've had discussions about that with fellow CIOs, but when you've got suddenly you lose all the talent, and then you've suddenly got these everything stops and goes on pause, and then everything starts up again. So the whole country starts up again, and you've suddenly got all of this latent demand. who are you going to get to run these projects?
Well,
And,
robots.
And what's going to happen to them if you don't have that talent? So I think New Zealand needs to really focus a lot on that and getting the right people in, the right talent in, getting the economy going, getting these projects going, and getting everything moving again.
Well, we don't have the educational capabilities nor the institutions to be able to generate the talent that we need for future demand. We've had long-term skill shortages for 20 years, and that's not going away. So we can't produce enough people that have the skills, and so we need to bring them in from offshore. But in that, when you're looking at the opportunities that exist for implementing agents, augmentation of these workforces with technology, whether it's AI or not, that's, I think, what you're talking about, right? Like, because there is such a massive opportunity for us to go up the productivity chain. There's only so many cows we can fit in this country, so many tourists we can fit in this country. If we're going to generate higher value products, technology is the place where that's going to happen, right, from an export perspective.
But you've got to have the ecosystem. I mean, the startup environment here in New Zealand is tough. You know, it's
actually pretty good. Like, we've got, I think, the highest number of angel investors per capita. We used to, anyway. But from an early stage funding institutional perspective, like the venture capitals here, we don't have enough money that are going into startups.
It's the seed round that's tough. You've got to have about a million coming through in revenue to really pick up that money. Now, our company did actually get funding. We've got a really good investor on board with that one, which is fantastic. But and there's lots.
You have got AI in the title.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, no, there's more and more people are starting to clue up onto that one though. But there's a lot of other really, really cool startups out there that are, pushing really hard. It's easier to get money if you're in America and Silicon Valley at seed round than it is in New Zealand.
Yeah, I'd say that's absolutely. What's the kind of the scariest thing that you see coming on the horizon? I mean, before we jump into that, I think one of the challenges around the implementation of any new technology, whether it's AI or not, AI is as we said, the trend du jour, but when you've got 80 to 90% of companies in New Zealand that are small to medium-sized enterprises, let's say they are 10 or even 15 or under, most of those owner-operators are working in the business. They're not working on the business. And so I think that the real danger for New Zealand is a massive opportunity for productivity uplift. But if these people are not providing that kind of great leadership, and then they are not working on the way that they're going to give unfair advantage to their organisation through implementation of technology, that's when you're going to deal with really difficult issues, I think. And that's when you get the cataclysmic kind of change that comes along and just sweeps away all of these players.
Yeah. It's hard to scale from little old New Zealand. And I mean, there are some good organisations in New Zealand that give you a hand to do that. But it's a big jump to take a product that you're selling in this market and then go to the US or go to Europe. And generally, you got to sell your soul to do it, and you probably got to move too.
Yep.
And look, that is what it is. But surely there's a better way. I mean, imagine if you get Fonterra-sized companies or Xero-sized companies. Imagine if that became the norm.
Yeah. Although, is that really our job? Like, do we birth companies and grow them in the nursery and then release them to the wild, because that's from a population perspective, from a resource perspective, that's what we have? Or do we try and build, another billion-dollar unicorns?
Well, it depends on where the tax is being paid. So I think if the money's coming back into the country, and we can actually spend it on the country, we can spend it on education, on health, then it doesn't matter if either of those solutions work. That's great. But I think the issue is that once a business gets to a certain size, it'll spin out. And do you get that money coming back in?
With international money, they want to get it out anyway.
Yeah.
And so, what do you kind of predict with the work that you're doing, the education that you're going through? What do you predict coming over the next kind of 5 to 10 years for the tech sector?
I actually think it's super exciting. I think there's going to be quite significant change. I think change unlike we've seen in 100 years. I think it's going to be bigger than
Ben-Hur.
Yeah, bigger than Ben-Hur. Bigger than the Industrial Revolution.
Wow.
The speed, everything is moving. I mean, if you look at something as simple as shopping, right now people will go to a website and look for a product on the website and buy it. In a few years' time, you're going to be sending out your personal AI agent shoppers to go find what you want, and they'll go out and they'll look at everything and they'll come back and give you a curated view of what you can actually purchase, and you have a conversation with that AI agent. Now that completely turns on its head how you do retail, right? Because I think the search bars are going to disappear. You're not going to search for a product on a website anymore. Websites might even disappear.
Yeah, there's this whole the optimization marketing at the moment of how you get your products into LLMs, right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting to see the way that these agents are going to be able to source that information and do the work for you.
And then you've got personal privacy. So I think the speed that this technology is moving, being able to protect your data, being able to protect everything about you, it's going to become harder and harder. So these guardrails, we've really got to move faster on putting these guardrails in place. That worries me the most.
But you're laying tracks, right, while you're driving the train.
Yeah, and I've never seen a train move this fast. You can't. It's very, very hard to keep up. And having those protecting people's privacy, and because I think the only people that are going to really suffer are the ones that don't have a lot of money. It's lowest. It's going to create a bigger gap. And those that can control these LLMs and everything, they're just gaining more and more power. And I think there's got to be a balance there. And I think the EU has probably got the best set of guardrails out there at the moment. The AI
having a swing, right?
At least they're having a swing. It's not perfect. And I think New Zealand is I think it's just using the Privacy Act. As its guideline, and I think we
just follow Australia, don't we?
So I think we need a bit more there, and I think it could really stimulate the economy if we could put more investment into it.
It's interesting. And then what do you think's missing from the sector as far as skills or capability at the moment, from your own experience historically and what your horizon gazing has revealed to you?
I think what's happening is a lot of technical people are suddenly changing their role titles from software engineer to AI engineer, and then kind of faking it till you make it. We're seeing a lot of that, coming through, and the CVs have got all the Lang Chain and Crew AI and everything. And when you start talking to them about it, it's just kind of more of a cursory view on that. Every now and then you'll come across a gem, but it's slim pickings. But the good thing is people understand where they need to be. Having the education programs, knowing what they need to do, knowing what sort of training they need, and having a clear path through that to make them as productive as possible and get them ready. I think that's super important.
This training thing, and the people change is always the most difficult change, right? And so I think that having really clear abilities and protocols on how to train people to be able to use these technologies is going to be really exciting, but I don't think it's there at the moment. Historically, New Zealand's not been particularly good at training and development, and if we're equipping that workforce, that's got to be it's got to be super high on the list.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that as we, I think the acknowledgement is that as you augment people, you make them responsible for more outcomes with the use of this kinds of technology. You're actually increasing your people risk, right? Yeah. Because you're 50xing or 10xing the outcomes that they're really responsible for, and asking them to make more creative decision making, ask them to deal with more stress, and making them more accountable for a larger degree of work. And that's stressful, right? Like it's difficult. And so I think it's going to be really interesting the role that leaders play in guiding the personnel through those kinds of journeys of increasing stress.
You've got to let them get in there and give it a go. I mean, I use AI nearly every few minutes during my day, some form of artificial intelligence in the work that I'm doing. And I think leaders need to encourage their teams to go in and give this technology a go. If you're not a technical person, have a crack at ChatGPT. If you're a technical person, get in there and start to, really get into the code and understand it. But the leaders also have to give, a certain set of guardrails. For example, if you're a graduate lawyer, don't use it to generate a contract for your client. Don't use ChatGPT to generate or put your information out there. You got to make sure that balance is actually there.
Sensitivity. Yeah.
But you've got to encourage its use. But yeah, just make sure it's all balanced out. I remember back in the days when the internet came in, they just turned off the internet because they were afraid of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's you got to have that balance.
Really interesting. Well, look, lovely to talk to you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
you
taking
too.
the time.
Yeah.
And appreciate it. Thanks,
Yeah,
Phil.
no worries. Thank you. Good to meet you.
Nice.
This is your captain speaking.